Hello everybody and welcome to another E5 podcast. My name's Paul Meenan and I'm your host for today, but I also have a very good friend to co-host with me to talk about the subject of the day. His name is Mr.
Ryan Dempsey.
Who the hell are you?
Who the hell are you?
Who the hell are you? You're not David Watts.
No, I'm not. I wish I was. I wish I was Sparky Ninja.
I'm Sparky Jedi, so I'm quite happy, although I do secretly idolise Sparky Ninja. So today's subject's going to be this is going to be one of the hardest podcasts I think we've ever done. Okay. Sadly, the other lads can't join us, family commitments, etc., and it's late night while we're recording these. We're going to talk about, let's be honest, we're going to talk about bullies. Maybe
very nice.
Not industry bullies, but just bullying in life in general, really. Now, me and you, we've spoke about this before. And we probably should just get this into a podcast form.
So the best way to do this, the best way to run this podcast, Paul, is just take a leap. Just give everybody listening to this podcast, give them an insight into a time when you've been bullied, or what your history or experience of bullying is. You might not have been bullied yourself personally. I suspect because you work in the same industry as me, you have experienced in some form. But yeah, why don't you share an experience with people who are listening?
I was stabbed in my eye when I was 10 years old with a pencil by a girl called Neve in St. Ignatius Primary School. I still remember that. She literally shoved a pencil in my eye and the lead broke off. She was trying to bully me. Girls can be bullies too. And I still remember that to this day. And
I would love Neve to be listening, but I doubt she will be.
No, she won't. She wouldn't do podcast at all. She weren't going to succeed at much in her life. She was one of the school bullies or idiots. Sorry, that just randomly came to mind. That was a kind of bullying. School really wasn't a massive bullying thing for me. I think if somebody said to me, who's the biggest bully you've ever met, it's my dad. And weirdly enough, it's kind of set me up for life. And that sounds really weird. My dad had 7 kids, so I'm 5 of 10. Okay, so my mum and dad had 5 kids. I was the youngest. My dad then had another 2 daughters. My mum had another 3 children. Henceforth, the term 5 of 10. My mum walked out when I was 3 months old. And my eldest brother, he pretty much raised me. My dad was a steelwork foreman, and he would come home, and if he'd had a bad day, which was pretty much every day, because he had to drive all the way across London to wherever the work was, he'd come home, and if we made a noise, we had the living shit beaten out of us. Let's not muck around. It was brutal. We used to. I remember sitting in the bathroom with our feet up against the toilet bowl, me and my sister, with my dad breaking down these old council cardboard doors, trying to swing a belt at us. If he had a bad day at all, we were battered, we were bruised. When my missus started dating me, she looked at my back and she said it's covered in scars and marks from where I was beat. Well, if it weren't a branch from a tree, it was a steel toe cap boot or a belt. He had no idea as to how to be. I mean, he's still alive now. He had no idea how to be a loving father. The only time he ever hugged me was on my 16th birthday. I nearly fainted when he did. That's the only memory I have. And it was really weird. But he was the biggest bully I'd ever met in my life. We were petrified of him. And weirdly, I owe him a lot because when we were growing up, he would call me a ponce and a puff and an idiot and a fool and a moron and a useless loads of other 4-letter words and tell me I'd never amount to anything. Wow. And I got so angry at him, so angry at the way he beat me and my brothers and sisters. I used to sit there and watch one of my oldest brothers saying to him, "You're going to get your comeuppance one day." And I was so angry. I thought, I need to use this. I need to do well. And when I went to college to train as an electrician, I couldn't do the maths. I was an average student all the way. I failed on my GCSEs. There's a YouTube video all on that. Didn't have the greatest of lives, but the tutors helped me along to get me past. And then I met on-site bullies, well, people who were considered bullies. They weren't bullies to me, they were idiots. They were nothing compared to my dad. So I ended up, I remember when I was 21, I finished my apprenticeship. I had my own car, just bought my own car, bought my own house, and I had a company van for the company that I was contracting with. And I remember going up to my dad and almost shoving the keys down his throat, metaphorically, of course. And growing up, I found with my own dad, I used my anger and rage with him to push myself, to force myself to do well. But also, I used to kill my dad with kindness. So I'm the biggest of all my family. And from about the age of 16, I used to hug him and kiss him. And he hated it. And even now, when I go to Ireland, because I'm the only one of my dad's kids who really gets on with him, other than his two other daughters. And every time I go near him, he expects a massive hug, big kiss from me, and I just overwhelm him with love. Now, people listening to this are going to go, but he beat the shit out of you, called you every name under the sun. It was all I had. It's all I knew. I never knew what a mum was. When Mother's Day came around, here's a amusing, weird story. Mother's Day in primary school. We had to make a card for our mothers. I was the only one in the class who didn't have a mum. And I remember saying to my teacher, "Excuse me, miss, I don't have a mum." And she went, "Make your dad a Mother's Day card or a Father's Day card." And apparently, I said to my tutor, "If I do that, I'm going to get beat." She then wrote a letter back to my dad, and I had to take the card home with the letter. My dad looked at the card, tore it up, and then beat me. So and I literally I genuinely I find the whole mother thing weird, because I've never had a mum. I can have the same relationship with a lamppost as I would my own mum. I've met her, but I don't know what it's like to have a mum. All I knew was a really strict disciplinarian father. That's probably one of the reasons I'm very assertive. I tolerate zero bullshit, and I absolutely will jump all over bullies. But yeah, my dad was the biggest bully I've ever had.
I find that really interesting about you, just because I've known you for a fair few years now. We met in 2013, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's a long time, and I kind of consider you as in the electrical industry. We can get onto different types of bullying from our experience in industry in a moment, but for you to tell me that story, it kind of breaks my heart to think that it obviously hasn't done you any damage in terms of turning you into a super fantastic person, because you come across as one of the nicest people I've ever met. Yes, you're harsh. Sometimes you say it as it is. However, which is a good thing. However, for anybody who meets you, not one person would say you've been through what you've just said. And what I'm trying to say is you're either hiding it very well, or you genuinely come across as, well, listen, mate, it happened. I've just got to get on with it. It doesn't bother me. But that, for me, I know you for you, and I suspect it does bother you. But I think you harness things far better than most people I know, and you use that to better yourself, which I think you just covered before when you said in terms of college and stuff. It's
kind of the only way that you can learn to cope. It's really weird. So growing up, I had one goal, and that was, if I was ever blessed with children, to be a better dad than my dad was to me. Sadly, as you know, me and Mrs. can't have kids, so that kind of shits all over that idea. So the only thing I had left was, well, I need to focus myself on something. And my dad didn't teach me that much. But the one thing I remember my dad when I was a kid, he would sit in the kitchen, in the hallway, on the telephone, with drawings pinned up on a wall. And he'd be arguing about the drawings. And this was late at night after he'd had his dinner. And I remember thinking, God, my dad's obsessed with his work. He's obsessed with his work. And when we were ill, in them days, in the 80s, if you were ill, you didn't sit at home. You went into work with your dad and you sat in the van, or you made tea and you went on a building site and did work. It was incredible how unsafe and mad it was. But I kind of garnered from him, if you're at work, try and, don't Don't be shit. Try not to be crap at what you do. And if you're with people who want to cut corners, fight them. And my God, did my dad fight people to do the job properly. And weirdly enough, that ethos has almost given, that ethos combined with being able to read, has given me what I consider a fantastic career, that if it stopped tomorrow, I would be absolutely made up with everything I've achieved so far. And I got that from my dad. I've always tried to take all the negatives of growing up in Tottenham, because if it weren't my dad beating me, it was my brothers and sisters. They were bastards. I was the youngest. It was batter, beat, punch, kick, all the rest of it.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I could listen to you kind of your family history all night. However, we need to move on to other pressing things.
Yeah,
but before I do, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, a statement, then a question. The statement is, I think you'd make an unbelievable father. I think you'd be amazing at it. The second one is, why do you think he did it?
Why do I think he did it? Because he didn't know any better. He's of a general. I got closure from my dad when I met my mum when I was 21, and I literally used to get a birthday card from her, and it had a phone number and address, and she lived in Dalston. So I went, rung her up, said hi, it's your son. Knocked on the door. It was literally like looking into a mirror, although she had long grey hair with boobs. But she inflects, she talks the same health issues, same favourite foods. And I said to her, why did you leave him? And she went, because he was a bastard. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, I can see that, but he was a bastard to us when you left, and didn't really help. But I didn't hate her. I didn't bear her any ill will. And my dad, I spent every August in Ireland, and he would walk barefoot around a mountain in Ireland, cutting and bagging turf, rucking hay. His dad fought in World War One, died when he was a young boy, so he only was raised by his mum. And he didn't know how to discipline 5 children. He had no idea. He left Ireland because he was threatened by the IRA. And he was of a generation of, you were disciplined, period. That it was a generational issue. I don't think it was malice, because as my dad's an old man now, he can be loving. I've seen him loving. It's just, I think it's just a generational thing and a situational thing, really.
So it brings you in quite nicely into, within our industry now, Paul, we have a plethora of ages. We have the really good sparks, who are nearing retirement, who are maybe still that kind of generation like your dad, who had that mentality of kind of beating it out of people and raising their hands. So we still have those people in the industry, and unfortunately, I mean, I've been subject to these people. Some of them are quite senior in the industry now, and I don't really want to go into too much detail. I can give people a kind of a heads up as to what's happened, but I've felt it. I've felt the wrath of industry bullying from a very high level, and these names are people who quite a lot of Sparkies would look up to, and they've, again, without going into too much detail, these people have literally tried to take food off my kids' plate. They have tried their hardest to see my business kind of fall into the Thames and wash away. And you've experienced it. You've been in environments where you've gone into meetings and you've mentioned about E5, and they've said, oh, that Dempsey's a member of E5 and we're not engaging with it until you get rid of him. And you've experienced what I've had to deal with for the last 4 years in the electrical industry.
Yeah,
longer than 4 years.
There is an issue in the electrical industry where, and I'll be honest, because that's the way we always are. Apologies if the first 10 minutes of this have gone dark for you and have upset you. There is an industry issue where I think it's fairly evident to say the Chinese whispering, the snowball effect there is some, I genuinely do believe there is some character assassination that has been done of your good self. I think all of it is without foundation, and is all done it's provocated by fear. I have said to you before that your product, that the work your day job is the inconvenient truth for the electrical industry, because your software is so good, there is nowhere to hide. For those who don't know, Ryan's software basically is an analytical tool that data mines and also will review electrical certificates like no other human being ever could. And it does it super quick, and it contributes so much to the asset management world. But you've been character assassinated for that. That's fairly evident. That's just one aspect of bullying. Can you tell me now where in your life, in your personal life or in your work life, where you've experienced bullying? I mean, when you were an apprentice maybe, or?
It is definitely not going to be as dark as you, Paul. I've had quite a nice upbringing. I had a loving mother and a loving father, and unfortunately I never experienced what you experienced.
Unfortunate about you wouldn't want to experience, so I wouldn't wish what I went through on nobody, trust me.
And then going through school and stuff, I was always the kind of the top boy and played on all the sports, and I knew everybody, and I didn't have any problems through school either, so I can't really comment on that.
I was the idiot.
Oh God. When I did enter into the world of business, though, I remember I joined the military, and that was this is before the yellow and red cards that have been introduced into the military, and I remember there's a number of times where if you didn't get out of bed at a particular time, the instructors would come in and they would do what's called lamppost you. And the term lamppost is when you're asleep on one of these rickety metal beds, really lightweight beds. If you don't get out of bed at the right time, two of them will get a hold of the bottom of that bed while you sleep, and they will throw it as high as they can while you're lying in bed. Other things which have been pushed off the back of ships before in little dinghies, and you've been thrown into the North Sea and as a bit of an initiation, and all of these things I never looked at them as bullying. I just thought these were traditions, if that makes sense. Obviously the industries and the world that we live in today is now considering this bullying because they've implemented a yellow and red card system in the military. My nephew's currently in the Royal Navy, and he says if an instructor or a senior officer speaks to you out of term, you can show them a yellow card, or you can show them a red card, and then it would have to be investigated. And I find that really crazy because I think to build people's character, there is a limit. I think your dad crossed it. I think there is a limit, but with a yellow and red card system in the military, I think we're going a little bit crazy. The eggshells that people have to walk on these days. In terms of me being bullied in my business life, in terms of the electrical industry, I would say it was more of an indirect bullying from when I went from being an electrician into a client role. When you become a client in the electrical industry, so any Sparkies who are listening to this, your next steps, you're a qualified electrician, you're earning money, your next step should be to have your own business. You should be inspired enough by other people who are, a great man once said to me, unfortunately he's no longer with us, if you ever want to make the money and have the freedom to do what you want to do, you need to work for yourself. And I've always listened to that. And so if you're a Sparky in the industry and you want to progress, it's work for yourself and or get yourself into a client position, get yourself into a senior client position. But that's where I started feeling the bullying, when I got to a client position, because people ignore you. And you and I are both members of the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and we've got letters after our name, and I got those letters after my name because of the amount of times I would ask somebody to do something and they would reply back with, what do you know? And that's a form of bullying, by inadvertently trying to make somebody feel less competent or less superior from a simple statement in an email or on social media, which we'll go into in a minute. By pretty much saying to somebody, well, what do you know? And then as soon as you get those letters after your name and you send an email, people just have this automatic respect for you. That's an issue in our industry. That's an issue that we should really address. But I'm quite fortunate, Paul, so I've not really... I started feeling extreme bullying, started to get subject to extreme bullying when I created a product and I wrote a series of blogs, and my intent for those blogs was not to poke the beast. It was to try and help other electricians or other people thinking about becoming an electrician understand the journey that one might go on and some of the pain points to get to where one might want to be. I didn't do it to prod anybody.
So I think just on that, the podcasts, the blogs that you wrote, I think we've discussed this already. You're going to record those blogs as a podcast, because there is nothing more confusing than the written word.
Yes.
You only have to go onto Twitter to see many sparks falling out over nothing. It's almost playground stupidity of, what did you say about my mum? I didn't mention your mum. What are you talking about? People fall out so quick, it's mind-blowing. So I think it's really good if you do a series of blogs or podcasts where you actually go through them, but you narrate them with inflection, with passion, with meaning, because then people will hear the intent behind the word. They will hear your journey. So make sure at some point you record them.
Okay, so I was thinking
them out
about
as
doing
bonus episodes or something.
So I was thinking about doing it, and now that you've mentioned it on a podcast, you've cornered me. So I definitely got to do it.
Committed you to it now. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
you have committed me.
Okay, so I've deliberately thrown Dempsey under the bus and committed him to do some bonus episodes where he reads or reimagines his blogs for the 2020 decade. But puts the intent behind them, because the written word is always misconstrued.
I will do that. So let me So this podcast is about bullying. Let me ask some questions, and I'm going to ask you a series of yes and no questions. And I know it's hard for you, Mr. Meenan, but I want you to just answer them yes or no.
Oh,
and I'm going to give you some scenarios in terms of, is it bullying or is it not? You answer no, it's not bullying. You answer yes.
Okay. This could be disastrous, but yeah, okay, fine. I do like the fact that we never plan any of this, which is that's one of the things that's so exciting. Other than the technical ones, we do plan them. But go on.
I planned it. I might not have told you I planned it, but I planned it.
I didn't plan this at all. I just took from the hip.
So you attend a meeting. It's an asset management meeting, and you are talking about a designer who has submitted a drawing for a new install of ticket machines on your railway.
Okay.
And you're in the meeting with a series of other influential people and executives for your organization, and you're all reviewing the designer's written word on a specification.
Yep.
Whilst reading that specification, you say out aloud in the room, Jesus, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's clearly incompetent. Is that bullying or not? Yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay. Moving on.
Because I'd have to evidence.
Moving on.
Right.
You log on to social media and you see an electrical company has posted a picture alongside a blog that refers to something they're extremely proud about, but that this contractor is unable to post pictures of their work because of data protection and GDPR. So they go to stock images, which may be right or may be wrong in terms of electrical safety. However, the picture is not the purpose of the post. You then decide, because the picture is wrong, to go onto social media into a public forum and write that the company clearly doesn't know what it's doing. And because they haven't safe isolation, they're touching the live side, they're using the wrong tools and equipment, and you criticize that company based on the stock image because. Is that bullying, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. This one's going to be very, very controversial.
I think the last two already have been controversial, but go for it.
You log on to Twitter after this podcast, and there is a series of tweets from a number of people who are pointing the finger at a competent person scheme, and they're saying that the competent person scheme is responsible for the decline in competence in our country, and that it was solely down to the likes of NIC and NAPIT who have destroyed our country. Is that classed as country? Yeah, our sector. When the electrical industry in this country, or the electrical industry within our country, they are responsible for the decline in electrical safety, quality, competence, and they are solely responsible. Is that bullying?
I'm merging towards saying yes, but also sitting on the fence.
Okay, so those three examples.
Because yes, they're not yes and no answers, really, to be honest with you. I mean, the last one, for instance, if you blame the NIC and NAPIT and Stromart and ECA for everything in the industry, you can't blame one body. What you have to do is look at the root cause of where things have gone wrong. That in itself is an incredibly intense piece of research. Now, it could be that one committee 10 years ago made a decision to produce a document which influenced another document, which influenced the creation of a course. Do you know what I mean? It could be a government decision to withhold funding. There is no one thing in our industry that has caused a decline. It is a multitude of at least 10 different variables. Part P is one of them. Part P, you could say, has definitely contributed towards the decline, and I would agree it has. However, it's not just Part P alone, because when Part P first came out, it was very strong. It required individual competence. But over the years, it's been watered down, to use a simplistic term. It has been changed and manipulated, or whatever term you want to use. But then there's the training, the apprenticeship schemes, the EAS specifications, the wiring regs, the committees behind all of these short courses run by the CPSs because they were allowed to. You know, the change in requirements for qualified supervisors. There is a whole multitude of things that have caused that. To just say, well, let's just say I said NAPIT have caused the decline in the industry, period, as a statement. Anyone listening to that's going to go, what a bell end. What a bell end. Because that, and imagine a judge, I was being sued for making that statement. A judge would tear me to pieces. You know, if NAPIT wanted to take me to court for saying you're solely responsible for this, they would tear me to pieces, because they would ask me what assumptions, what evidence I had behind that decision. You know, and why I'd done that character assassination or that libelous statement, because it is libelous. And that's just really dumb. But the minute the industry, I would rather spend my energy focusing all of the industry bodies into positive steps of change and improvement. I mean, let's be honest about it. NAPIT recently have ditched their 5-day courses, which is great. Took long enough, but they've done it. Moving on. Little small steps. I've always said this about E5. The industry, anyone who wants our industry to change overnight, go and get on a bus, take it all the way to the Outer Hebrides of Scotland and go and speak to a brick wall, because it ain't going to happen immediately. You need to realise that it's took 20 to 30 years of decline, going back to the YTS schemes even, and it's going to take 20 to 30 years of incline to get back to a level.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
But that's the first one. What was the second one again? Sorry.
The second one is when a company posts a picture and it's a stock image because of GDPR and data protection, and they use an image that may not be.
So I got it. So yes, that was bullying, but for the sole reason of, if I saw that, I would basically now message them directly and say, you do realise you're looking like complete twonks using that image, because that image is part of the statement. Sometimes pictures can speak 1,000 words. If you use a picture, you're responsible for the content. Would I put it all over Twitter? No. Some of the things that, I mean, there's one great picture, stock image of a guy screwing on a socket onto a wall and the back box is still attached. And you just think, in the context of the statement, it's just a stock image.
No,
it's the mindset of people who don't understand what a stock image is.
Yeah, okay.
It's just fundamentally flawed. But still, go directly to them and ask them and inquire. You know me, I've asked loads of manufacturers direct inquiries about a number of things, but I don't put all that on social media. Not any. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems is, and we see it, and is people trying to. They think by criticising, it's almost that, pardon the term, but it's almost like getting their dick out. And I apologise for the term, but it's within the electrical industry. It's every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to prove that they understand something or they know something better than the next person.
Yeah, and I call it.
And it's quite sad to experience that. And you're right. what you just said there is exactly what I would do. I would message that organisation independently, and I wouldn't do it in the public forum because I think that is morally and ethically wrong to do.
So just to be clear here, in southern counties, the syndrome that you're talking about is commonly known as Billy Big Bollocks. It's when you meet someone who has to prove that they're better than you, you call them old Billy Big Bollocks, because they sit and go, oh, yes, well, if you actually look at note 4 of regulation 4312206, it actually says you don't have to do this, and you just sit there and go, really? Okay, Billy Big Bollocks, great, thanks for that. By the way, we weren't actually talking about the regs, but nice one, thanks for that. So yeah, you get loads from, that's fine.
Okay.
I think that syndrome comes from a want to impress your peers. I think we're all guilty of it at times.
Okay.
First question was again, sorry.
The first question is, you have a designer who submits a proposal, and you are reading the proposal in front of some executives and some influential people, and you decide to make comments on the individual rather than the document.
Okay, so anybody who works in the electrical industry, I'll tell you now, right, this is more of a commercial industrial, I think, but anyone who works in major projects who's responsible for delivery will look at a design and go, this is an utter pile of rubbish. I have in 24 years never worked to a design which I would consider really world class, maybe one or two little small ones, but generally standard of designs, you're better off doing it yourself on the back of a fag packet. I have criticised designs where I have, when I say criticised, commented. It's a professional term. I have had designs given to me and I have done like 250 comments on like a 20-page document because there are so many fundamentally flawed parts of it. I've then had the designer brought into the room, and the designer has been a 22-year-old graduate, wouldn't know what Unistrut was, wouldn't know what conduit is, wouldn't know what half the equipment that's actually been installed, and yet they're responsible for the design. You then realise within 5 minutes this person, it's their first job, they've been thrown in the deep end, and then the entire supply chain has not looked out at competency, not assessed for competency, or assigned that person in the right role. That person doesn't want to lose their job, so they're just trying their best. You end up having to mop up. So I have been in many a meeting where I've had to say to that person's employers, that person is not working on my projects. I cannot afford to be paying for a trainee. And yeah, that happens regularly. So I genuinely don't see it as bullying, because remember saying, if you're a client and you're paying for a world-class service or a decent service or a compliant service and you're getting fobbed off with rubbish, why would you sit there in silence when you're paying? You're expecting your supply chain to be competent and professional.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so no, I don't see it as.
So I already knew you were going to say that.
I thought you did.
So I have a backup question.
Okay.
And it's a similar scenario, but not quite. I'm going to read out a series of events. And all I want you to say is give me your opinion at the end of it.
Okay, go for it.
You did tell me not to do this, but I am going to do it.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I was once approached by a member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology to write a submission paper, which was all about me, my experience, my knowledge, my competence, my qualifications, my experience as a client, the amount of people I manage, the amount of budget I manage. And I was asked to submit this through to an individual, which we'll leave the names out, at the request to join the panel that is responsible for writing our wiring regulations. And it was understood by this individual within the IET that because I worked in social housing, I would contribute very positively to the development of our standards in electrical safety. So I did it because I was requested to do so. That document was then submitted to the main panel of JPL 64, a meeting that I wasn't in attendance to. And it was read out, everything about me. An individual then stood up, red-faced, which is the notes I've got in front of me, red-faced, clearly in anger, and continued to go down, stating derogatory remarks about Dempsey, stating he is extremely aggressive in meetings and that he holds a good grudge against anyone who sits on committees trying to ensure electrical safety within this industry. I was not at that meeting, therefore I did not have the opportunity to defend myself.
Okay.
Is that bullying?
Yes, because that's character assassination tantamount to slander. So yes, it is. The fact there is a difference. So let me throw something to you. So if I say I want a designer removed from a project, I will not say it based on his personality or where
Yes.
he's from or anything else. I will say I need this designer removed from the project because the client has picked up 250 comments on a very small piece of work that should be relatively simple, or the designer has not surveyed the work, designed it accordingly, and it's now costing me additional money and delays. That's why I will have the designer removed. Okay. If I sit and say this designer is a effing silly effing blah 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 load of stupid, and just go off like on a childish tangent, then
Yeah.
that's character assassination, that's slander, that's bullying. If you stick to facts and objectivity, and that's the one thing that Sparks, we're pretty crap at. We are as a trade, because Sparks are, of all the trades, I've always said this, some of the biggest bitches in all the trades. And you've only got to just look at YouTube. My God. And it's objective, factual, yeah, and it's for the benefit of a project and the money you're paying out. What happened with you was somebody stood up and character assassinated you. Now, I have inquired about joining the JPL committee as well, and I just got a brick wall thrown up against me when I was at TFL. That's fine, because to be honest with you, I was hoping that I could sit on there on behalf of what was London Transport. It was fairly evident that there was something that disturbed me the other day that I heard on I think they're a video cast, or I don't know what they are, a video online. And it was encouraging people to comment on the wiring regulations. But the individual who was saying it, basically, he kind of let slip, because what he said was this was your opportunity to contribute, but then he said you can't change the intent of the regulations.
Yeah.
So the whole DPC process, you can't turn around and say, I don't want this in there. You only can basically talk about the wording of the intent of the regulation, not the actual regulations themselves. So we have in the wine regulations a draft of public comment system where we can't actually change the regulations. And this was according to an IET video cast that was done the other day. And I found it quite disturbing, because I took that as, so you can comment, but we're not actually really going to listen to you. And it's the intent of the regs is happening. So if we as a committee decide we're going to introduce energy efficiency in Amendment 2, you can't stop it. It's happening. Period.
Yeah, comes in Amendment 3, I think, because they've already leaked that.
But what's the point in the public commenting then?
I agree. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Well, it becomes a complete false economy. It becomes a non-starter. No wonder nobody bothers commenting on the damn thing, other than trainers, lecturers, and industry bodies. That's why there's no take-up, because they won't listen to you anyway.
Yeah. The committee mentality across our industry is appalling.
It's cancerous. Yeah, it is.
So let's talk about the legal definition of slander, defamation of character. If somebody's bullying you, I mean, we've seen in the news the last couple of days, which is heartbreaking, about Caroline Flack, who's been kind of subject to quite a lot of finger pointing. There's been Valentine's cards which were published, kind of destroying her as an individual, and the poor lass has gone and took her own life because it just got too much. And I mean, it's not funny. It isn't funny. And
I've never really watched. I saw that in the news.
But I've never watched it really, and it doesn't.
I don't know what Love Island is, other than what I saw on the TV. It sounds like one of those weird, like Big Brother type shows. But
it's a program for millenniums, Paul. I think we're a little bit too old for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's sad when someone has to kill themselves at any time, any day of the week, regardless whether they're on TV or not.
They literally, and the press literally took her life away from her, physically and then she finished the job herself. And I think it's so sad that the bullies pushed on that. And if you're in the electrical industry and you feel you want to comment on somebody, you are totally within your rights to have an opinion. But if that opinion is going to hurt somebody, if that opinion is going to potentially harm that individual's respect for in an industry or their persona in an industry,
you don't have that right.
You do not have that right. You are a knobhead if you decide to go online to actively search out and attack somebody. Then you deserve the karma that is going to come back and slap you in the face if somebody physically doesn't do that. You deserve it. You deserve it wholeheartedly.
Well, I think the term that our wonderful friend Dan uses is time thieves.
Time thieves is right.
Thieves. What a great term. So Dan Jackson, God love him, uses the term time thieves. Where is it fair to say, as E5, we get overwhelmed by emails and messages and stuff. So apologies if people do message us. Genuinely, we never thought we would have email boxes with hundreds of emails waiting to be answered. And then people say, "Oh, I messaged you ages ago and you ain't got back to me." It's because we all work full-time jobs. It's our passion and our hobby. And I worked pretty much all of Boxing Day just sending out badges. It's just time-consuming of biblical proportions. And Dan, when we come across negative persons who are expecting answers within minutes, Dan calls them time thieves, and it's a fantastic term because we know and we've seen people in industry that you just consider immediately a time thief, and it's, do you contribute any value in the conversation? Do you contribute anything to my betterment, to my family's betterment, or my career development? No. Are you just talking shit for the sake of it? Yes. Well, then you're just a fucking time thief.
Yeah.
And I love that.
It is good. Dan's quite good at coming up with these terms.
Well, he's an ECA award winner, isn't he? He's
an ECA power player. Yeah, he's
power player.
We were texting each other today about different types of walking shoes or boots, and I was taking pictures of my walking shoes and my boots and saying you should get this type, and he's saying, yeah, but what if it rains? And I've got a lot of time for the E5 guys. I've also got a lot of time for people who contact me and ask for my advice on things. But you're right. If somebody comes with an attitude and they are forceful and comment that, oh, if we don't reply within a set period of time, because when we set up E5, Paul, I'm sorry, but I did not sign up to a set of KPIs. I did not sign up to a performance marker that says we will reply within a set period of time. I will give 100% of my attention. I will give 100% of everything I know, everything that I am, to whoever wants it.
No, we don't have KPIs. It's about self-improvement, sharing of knowledge. Yeah. The old support, educate, influence, inspire, and inform. That's our only KPI. Is what we do should influence, inspire, and inform people, and support and educate them. That's the only mantra that we have. It's the only mantra we want. Everybody else, we do this on top of a busy and successful day jobs. Dan's doing his consultancy, he's YouTubing. Dave, Sparky Ninja, your TCW. Paul is a very busy machinery and compliance consultant. John Ward's still on the tools, domestic stuff, and also just a YouTube icon, I think it's fair to say. Plus many other people as well in E5. Richard Emery started doing the podcast, the Lee Wards, the Adrian Davies. They're all you can contribute to E5 in just having the right behaviours. Do you know what I mean? And for those who criticise us and say you're not following the statement of ethical principles, it's not doctrine. It's a mantra of continuous improvement. We're working towards being better humans, better engineers, better sparks. There's a reason that document came out, and it's worth doing the work to understand why it came out. But just back on bullying, a little story for you, because you mentioned about letters after your name earlier on. So I worked for a certain company, and me and the other engineers, I won't name them, but there was such a thing called CEng Club. And basically, if you weren't a chartered engineer, you weren't listened to. And the minute you got CEng, you were immediately in CEng Club, and you were listened to. It was incredible. And yet the worst thing is nothing changed when you got CEng. All that happened was as you were peer recognised by the industry for being able to work within a framework of behaviours, commitment to CPD and ethics, and that was it. But the CEng Club very much existed in the commercial, industrial, management, infrastructure organisations. Doesn't really happen in obviously domestic. But I noticed CEng Club, if you weren't part of it, you were treated like second-class citizen, which in itself was a form of bullying.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember when I got my fellowship, being pulled aside by a manager and being told, yeah, don't brag about your fellowship, it will just piss people off. Now that to me was a form of bullying, because what I had was an absolute cockwomble trying to basically be derogatory, to control me, to keep me down using these 1972 management skills, which to be honest, you should fuck off back to 1972. And I weren't having any of it, and I ended up leaving anyway, because you can only do so much in a company. When you start hitting brick walls of ignorance, then you realise you won't have any more influence to make things better or do the job well. You can only take the skills and the behaviours that you have and move on. It's the main reasons I leave companies, to be honest with you, unless I get a better offer somewhere else, obviously. But yeah, I see that as subliminal bullying. When you're in management, you will, if any sparks out there work their way up off the tools, you will have what you perceive to be bullying and control freaks in your life. My advice is to try and understand. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me was my missus, because my missus trained as a counsellor, psychotherapist, and now she's an occupational therapist. And I, being a sado, used to read her books and would then just start to read and analyse people. And it helped me deal with my dad. Helped me understand the root cause of why my dad was the way he was, what sort of issues caused that. And it just gave me a clarity. And when I met my mum, it was closure. I got closure on the questions I had around my parents. And I realised they're the cards you've been dealt in life. Accept them, see the strengths and the positives you've been given, even if you create them yourself, and move on. And that's why for me, E5 it's a passion for the rest of my life. It's my hobby. I don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Dave doesn't have to do it. But it's something that hopefully will just keep going.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Even past my time, I'm hoping it will just keep going.
Well, there's no reason why it shouldn't. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said there in terms of that hidden bullying. It might not seem like bullying, but it is
subconscious, isn't it? It's subconscious. I remember I worked for Transport for London. They had a fantastic anti-bullying policy, and in that bullying policy, they said basically bullying can be anything that makes you feel threatened, vulnerable, or upset. Yeah. And I remember the first time I read it, and I was thinking, "Cool, blimey! Well, everybody's bullying everybody to a certain extent. Where does that put banter and I mean, me and the lads at TFL, we used to swap each other's desks around and put silly things in each other's books and write stupid messages or send silly emails, all bantery type office fun. We never ever considered bullying, but I think that's one of the social skills problems of. I'm noticing as I'm getting older with the generation now. I know everyone calls it the snowflake generation, which is a bit strange. Never really understood that, but the banter that people engage with. I always say this to people, and I've met people for the first time, and within 10 minutes they've insulted me massively because they've immediately assumed we're best buddies, best pals, and they've just took it to a whole new level of banter. And I'm like, hang on, I'm still trying to figure out if you're a decent human being. Yeah. And you're now wanting me to invite you around for Christmas. And I found that for me, if I go and work anywhere, I am the epitome of respect, good behaviours, until I know that person. I understand that person and I know what I can do with them.
Yeah.
In regards to, are they a fun, outgoing person? Are they an introverted person? Are they an extroverted person? Am I overwhelming them? Are they overwhelming me? Because you have to adapt your behaviours so that you're not causing grief or concern, I think is the key thing. And I don't think many people do that in a lot of workplaces.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Just lastly, apprentices.
We've covered a hell of a lot.
We have apprentices.
Yeah, just a couple of.
Go on.
Apprentices, Christ,
Well,
yeah,
I want to tell you a
apprentices.
story of bullying. I want to tell you a story of bullying. Vaughan, God love him. So I was an apprentice at a company called BFP. They're now called Emico, wonderful company. John Barry, wonderful man, love him dearly. Tom Gaffney, wonderful man, love him dearly. He was my foreman. And I got the usual abuse. In fairness, I used to go to work with my foreman, Tom, and he met my dad once, and my dad basically just gave him carte blanche to do whatever. I hated him for it, but in all fairness, I got beasted, I got pranked. I used to bring a camera into like the old wind-up film ones into site because I wanted to take pictures of the work I did for my Seating Guilds 236 to go towards the modules. Because in college you do a 1.5mm 3-core armoured. On site I'm doing a 185 4-core. So I wanted to evidence it. Now, the lads would steal the camera while I was off getting all the dinners and take pictures of their asses and their cocks. That's what they did. So when I got the film developed, I had loads of pictures of blokes' bums and willies. It was very strange. Was that bullying? Yeah. Was it banter? Yeah. It was humorous pranks, I suppose, that blokes play on each other. But one lad, my best friend in college, a guy called Vaughan, he got an apprenticeship with a domestic company, and they were utter bastards. And I hope this resonates with a lot of apprentices. They take him to the cafe, they buy him lunch. They then on Friday dock the lunch out of his money. Now he was on crap money anyway, so to dock his lunch, he was on virtually nothing, literally pennies. They took him to a school once, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. And what they did was it was an old parquet floor. They cut a small section up, just enough for a skinny 8 stone of a lad to basically get underneath this floor so that he could rip out a load of pyros and put some new cables in for sockets around this big school hall, right? The minute he got under there, they'd run all the cables in, and once they'd got the last of the cables up through the floor, one of the lads then went and put the hatch back down, screwed it shut, and they buggered off and left him there overnight.
No.
They left him there overnight. He basically was literally squatted underneath this floor. He had to go toilet there. He was crying. It was a traumatic experience. The next morning, the caretaker was in there and he was banging, and the caretaker ended up getting him out. He then basically asked the caretaker to ring the police. He rung his mum because he was only, I think he was 17, 18 at the time. And it traumatized him. He now sits in buildings in London doing PPM maintenance, changing batteries in self-contained fittings, pushing smoke alarms, just doing basic stuff. It destroyed him as a human being. Destroyed him.
That's appalling.
I would have got, I'll be honest with you, I've got a lump of conduit and just destroyed them. I would have. I did have one foreman who was a git to me, and I ended up hitting him with a bit of 4-inch trunking lid towards the end of my apprenticeship. Not proud of it, but
right. Listen, Paul. It's the age that I grew up in the northeast. If you had a disagreement with somebody, or if somebody was bullying you, or you ever found yourself in that position, you just went around the back of a building and you both had a fight, and whoever won, you stood up and you shook hands and you walked away, and that was the end of it. And unfortunately, that's just not how
that
things are.
That is kind of also, you know, realise that is also a gypsy mentality, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Which is kind of weird because my mother's family are all gypsies. So maybe that's where I get that from, because I was never afraid if somebody ever wanted to have a fight or a punch up. I was never afraid I've never been afraid of confrontation, ever. I don't like it. Loads of people who know me will go, Mean and always likes a row. I hate rowing. I'm just not scared of having a row, especially when I know I'm fighting or rowing for what I know to be right, factual and objective. That's the difference.
I have a really, 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 really bad habit that I wish I could get rid of, but I just can't. And when I get into a position where it's a heated debate, or I am backed into a corner, I smile.
Right.
And I don't know why I do it. I
don't back down. I go for it. People who know me know when I sit in a meeting, sometimes if I listen to stuff that kind of boils my blood pressure a bit, I will sit and put my hand up and very respectfully wait for a quiet moment and then just go for it, because I can't sit in a room. And anyone who comes off the tools into management, you have you know what? You have a Liam Neeson in you. So you have that, what's it he says? He says, I have a particular set of skills skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. No, but it's that I will but it's when you
I
come
will
to
find
talk,
you.
you have, I will find you and I will quote 7671 to you. No, but it's the skill of having practical experience. When you go into an office and loads of people are talking about managing a physical process that none of them have ever experienced, you have a skill advantage. You have a knowledge advantage, which makes you able to contribute and learn from other people. And that's the one thing I've found out. I learned asset management from people far cleverer than me. I learned project management from geniuses far cleverer than me. But in return, I've always taught them practicalities. And I love that. And that's the one thing I always look for in the workplace. And you will meet bullies along the way. You will meet egocentrical people who won't share their knowledge, who see you as a threat rather than a enabler or an opportunity to improve. You will meet clients who are really bad bastards who have had just got the worst experience ever if you're working as a subcontractor. For me, I wanted to be a client because I wanted the people who worked with me or under me, I hate that term, to be happy in their jobs, knowing they could do the best that they could do at work. And that now seems to be some weird, unique thing. And that freaks me out. That speaks volumes about the industry as to how toxic it is.
Yeah, so if we just consider a couple of points, Paul, that I think are really important and something that I definitely want to see, because bullying is rife in our trade, unfortunately, and there's a couple of really important things that we need to see. And the first one is probably the most important point, is you could do one thing with one person and you could do the same thing with another person, and one of those people would consider it bullying, the other one wouldn't. You need to judge people on their merits. You need to judge people as individuals. Some people take things to heart a lot more than others do. You and I we're quite easy. We can have that banter. We can have a laugh.
That's because we've got respect for each other.
Yeah, and I get that, and we can go to events and stand up in front of 300 Sparkies, and I can be called the non-technical one, and it's banter. We can have a laugh about that. But you could say that to other people and they would take it to heart. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if you are having banter, let's not get rid of the banter. Let's not get rid of the personalities and the things that we do that we enjoy in the industry, but just be a little bit cautious about the people around you and how people feel. What was that was Robin Williams' famous quote? I put it on a post earlier about. Let me just have a look. It's a good quote, and everybody should kind of really pay attention to this. Let's have a look. It refers to you don't understand what people are going through. It's not on the faces. It's not written down. It's not above their head on a flag. You have absolutely no idea what torments and troubles people are going through. So just be kind. And if there's a choice of being right or being kind, maybe not in the circumstance of the designer and Paul, the designer for the client and stuff, but in just general day-to-day life, if there's a choice of being right or being kind, and you have the view that it could potentially hurt somebody, then always choose kind. It's sad that we could make a particular comment and somebody could then go and throw themselves off a bridge, and you don't want that on your hands. Leads me on to the second bit that I wouldn't mind just stating is if there's anybody listening to this who is kind of feels a bit down or is getting bullied and just doesn't know where to turn, please feel free to contact me or any of the E5 guys 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or pick up the phone and ring the Samaritans or ring somebody close to you. Somebody needs to do something to try and help people who are kind of really suffering, and if you don't talk, people can't help. So yeah, just they're the two kind of really important points I wanted to get out on this podcast.
So yeah, no, I was actually going to say Depression, again, I'm using my missus here really, is that depression is a common mental disorder which causes people to experience depressed mood, loss of interest, pleasure, feelings of guilt or low self-worth, disturbed sleep, appetite, low energy and poor concentration. I'll be the first person to admit that I am consistently battling depression from reasons we spoke of earlier on, really the whole not having kids stuff. It's so I try and use positive things, positive objects to transition my depression into a positive outlook, positive mentality. It's a worldwide issue. I don't think it's embarrassing at all to actually talk about it. I think it's a strength, and I think more and more people are realizing that. I think the Samaritans, I did, and just I suppose lastly, really, I actually did a Samaritans course, which was very good when I joined my current employer. And it was basically you turn up for a day and they teach you how to listen. Because that's one of the things, if you're ever having a hard time, if you ring the Samaritans on 116123, which is free, they will just listen. They won't question you. They won't judge you. They will just listen. And I found it was one of those life-changing courses which would make me better prepared for helping others. And it was called you can do another version of it called Mental Health First Aider, but the Samaritans don't necessarily, they're just about listening and helping people and supporting them by listening and just being objective. And I found it one of the better courses I've ever done, and it's definitely changed me, I think, for the better. But yeah, so if you are feeling it, ask any of us, speak to any of us. Don't be afraid to open up. I think from an electrician's on social media, Nick Bundy did a fantastic video on YouTube where he opened up about the challenges he's had in life and his family. Very powerful video. I watched it. I'm not afraid to say I did tear up listening to it. But then again, I'm of that age now where I think I'm more confident in my feelings, and I will cry watching Armageddon or any film, Extreme Makeover Home Edition. I'll cry my eyes out on, to be honest with you. Pretty much cried during Dunkirk, the movie, 1917, the movie. So yeah, I'm a crier. But anyone who knows me knows I'm an emotional person. I'm a hugger. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I see that as a strength. I don't see it as a weakness. Some people do find it a weakness because some people find it overwhelming, and those people I can only try and work on my sensitivity and balance. But yeah, that's it really.
So the quote that I was looking for was the Robin Williams was, "Every single person you're meeting is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Be kind, always."
And I cried when he died, and the man was a powerful, powerful individual of humour and love. And when it was a tragedy what happened to him.
Incredible.
And I get sad every time I watch his stuff because I laugh and I think he's no longer around to be with his family. But yeah, quite a powerful message that really. Mr. Dempsey, any final thoughts, or because we're going to stop here, I think.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered quite a lot. Just speak up is the message I'd like to give at the end of this one. We always do a bit of a message from the guys who are on the podcast. Just kind of reach out. The E5 guys, we might be all kind of technically competent, which is a shitty word to use in our own kind of areas of work. In our own areas of work, and you might feel that you can just come to us to ask questions or look at specifications or help you with technical stuff, but we are more than happy to kind of let people use our ears to if it helps. So
indeed. Okay, so on that final note, I'm going to end this. So apologies if this has been a dark one for you, but it's been an honest one. And I'm okay. Ryan, you're okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.